Big news today. Kevin Warsh is speaking for the first time as Fed president of the United States. Interested to see how that's going to turn out. The Iran and United States peace deal is on the verge of potentially not going through. And we are still talking about SpaceX and how this is potentially going to play out over the next few months. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another beautiful day in real estate. Today, we're going to dive into a few of those items and we're going to give you some feedback and our 2 cents on what we think is going to happen. So, without further ado, interest rates continue to stay staggered exactly where they are. Essentially, haven't moved much at all. 6.12, 6.14 for the VA and FHA, and the fixed at the 6.5 range right now. Now, talking to a buddy of mine yesterday who is a lender and a very good lender, he was talking about how a lot of people are still able to get their deals a little bit lower than this, right? I think in some cases we're even in the fives for the FHA and the VA, and then conventional lower sixes, 6.1, 6.2. So we still have some good optimism here in the market. It's interesting to kind of see what's going to be coming next. But without further ado, let's jump right into my favorite deal, which is SpaceX, because I have been talking about it the last few days. And now I'm kind of wondering if my first initial thought process was going to make a little more sense. Now, granted, the data is still very new. There isn't very much data to go along with it, but when I do see a reverse hammer of this nature, it does make me wonder, because this is what it closed on yesterday. So Tuesday it opened at 200 and it closed at 201. It went all the way up from 200 to $225 a share and all the way down to 195. When you see stuff like this, it typically means that there's running out of juice or running out of volume. The buying pressure is starting to subside. And then you typically see a correction. You typically see things shift just slightly, and then they start going down. It's where you start to see the ups and the downs in the stock market. Like I said, after reading yesterday, I was pretty excited to hear about what SpaceX's mentality is and their idea of what they're trying to do with the technology and with the company. But I still think that we're not quite there yet. I still think we're buying hopium rather than a product. And again, I'll refer to it simply like I did yesterday when it came to metaverses. Metaverses was the same idea. Everybody thought we were going to be living in a new world. We were going to wear headsets everywhere. Meta came out with this project where they were going to create a virtual reality. And then you had MetaPlanet and you had MetaHero and you had all these companies come out that were creating these worlds, right? And none of them are here today. None of them. Meta or Facebook dropped their idea about 3 months into it because it was just not plausible yet. You have the idea is there, but just like everything else, it's not quite their technologically, excuse me. So for us to buy into a project, we're buying into hopium, right? We're buying into the promise of a product coming, even though we don't have an actual product yet. Now, I did talk about some of the revenue that this company does provide, and how it is factored in 3 different companies, right? You have Starlink, you've got SpaceX, and you've got AI all under the same roof. So, I mean, there is a lot of good things there, but again, we're still buying a product that doesn't really exist yet. And the idea that they're working on currently is putting server farms and AI centers in space because it's more efficient, it costs less money, blah blah blah. But we're not quite there. We haven't done it yet. So I don't know. Maybe this is me here just being me, but I'm guessing we probably are going to see this kind of tip out over the next couple of days, and then it'll kind of come back down. I hope people are pulling profits because even if you bought at the day of open, you are up over 60% right now. I think. What are we at right now? Even now, 36%. If you would have sold yesterday, you were up 50%. I mean, that's not a bad way to start your week, especially if you were paying attention and trading correctly. But this is where I try to point things out too. And just since we're on the topic of it, again, maybe it runs today. I don't know. I really don't, because again, the markets have been less than normal, to say the least. People are pushing things and markets running weirdly, I should say. It's not. It gives you those gambling blow off top vibes is what it does, right? When you see stocks and cryptos move significantly. Mostly stocks right now. I think we're more in a bull run for stock market than we are for anything else. But when you see things move significantly and in a short period of time, usually that means that we're getting to the end of the bull market cycle. And for stocks, we very well could be getting there. At first, everybody was so worried about crypto and stocks like correlating and side by side running in tandem, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't. I think SpaceX is kind of that last big stock that's going to come out before the stock market kind of hits its peak in the bull market. Blow off top could be reaching a recent peak in the S&P 500, and I think from there we're more than likely going to see money funnel into crypto from there. I think we're always going to have a little bit of a divergence between the two, a little bit of a give and take, if you will. So you've got stocks run over here, and then the money starts to bleed. Then that money goes into crypto, which makes it pump from there. So we'll pay close attention to this, but no major news has come out today on that. But we'll just keep the thing moving. So the other thing that we're going to talk about today, which is very important, is that Kevin Warsh is speaking for the first time today to figure out, are they going to hold interest rates at 3.5%, 3.75, or are they going to drop them, or are they going to raise them? This is really going to set the tone for the next 4 years, to be honest with you. I mean, the big thing is we have no idea really where Kevin Warsh is at. We've heard rumors, we've heard his conversations, but we really have not heard any direct policy from him. So today's going to be very important. We had CPI numbers and PPI numbers that came in hot. Lower oil prices now, which is good. The inflation is still above target, which we kind of talked about. The Fed, with Jerome Powell as president, wanted the inflation to be at 2% before dropping rates. It is at 4.2, if I recall the last one that came out. So the war's ending, which is positive, right? We're seeing oil prices come down, positive. Inflation's still high, a bit of a negative, right? CPI, so core inflation, that's still a little bit higher than it should be. But we've heard rumors that they're going to essentially restructure the way that we view inflation. Now, the Biden administration did something similar to this. Basically, it was not about inflation, it was about recessions, right? So recessions by the book is after 2 quarters of negative GDP as a country, then we are technically in a recession. Well, they kind of moved that goalpost. They're like, yep, it's here, right? No, it's over here, actually. We're not technically in a recession. We just changed the way things look. So I think they're going to do the same thing with inflation when it comes to this. I think that Kevin Warsh is going to depict things or describe things in a different manner. Either way, we'll find out today at 2:30 Eastern time, so that's 1:30 Central time. I am excited to see what happens. I'm going to be watching that interview or that presentation, whatever you call it, press conference, whatever, and then I will dive a little bit deeper into it tomorrow morning. I don't think interest rates are going to get raised today. I'm going to be very surprised, especially with him coming in and being the proponent of lower interest rates. I don't think they're going to lower. I think they're going to stay exactly where they are. If they lower them today, I'm going to expect the markets to run pretty heavily because I don't think anybody really is anticipating that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm missing. But more than likely, Kevin Warsh is going to want to keep interest rates where they're at. He's going to want to get his feet under him before he starts making major moves. So we'll know again today at 1:30. So that's kind of where we stand on that, which I'm excited. I mean, it's been 8 years of Jerome Powell, and now we're finally on the verge of potentially something new, hopefully more positive. I've talked to people about this more recently, but people are starting to kind of come out of the woodwork again. They feel like the world's kind of shifting a little bit again. People are feeling optimistic. They're feeling ready for the next challenge. They want to be a part of things. They want to do things. It's not so much hopeless anymore. And maybe it's just me hoping to see better days. But the last few weeks seem to be a shifting point. And we'll find out. We'll find out over the next few years or next few weeks, excuse me. But let's talk oil real quick. Oil prices have kind of found their bottom right now. Right around $76 a barrel for the WTI crude oil, and Brent crude at about $81 a barrel. Right now, that kind of makes sense to me. We've talked about these before, so we pay attention to support and resistance on these charts. I do use the daily chart, anticipating the next 3 days, next 3 weeks. That I play in threes usually, right? But as you can tell, this is like that most recent peak back in 2025 for oil, right around $81 a barrel, and now we're finding that support there. We're finding a support. Boom, boom, 1, 2, 3 major touch points, 4 major touch points, and I mean most recent all the way back to August of 24. So if we break below this, which we're finding it did break below, it's starting to kind of pump up above it. If it breaks above $81 a barrel, we might find support. If not, more than likely going to $77 a barrel, and then from there moving farther down. I don't know. I don't think we're necessarily quite there yet. There was some news that came out this morning talking about how Iran and the United States are not exactly on the same page anymore as they were a couple days ago. So we're going to dive into that here next. But right now, things aren't looking too terrible, but they do. Just like every other market, every other part of the market, right? When it runs, it eventually needs to cool off. When it falls off a cliff, it eventually needs to cool off and go back up slightly, right? So I don't expect the move to be big, but I do think we're going to have to see a little bit of move forward, right? Or a little bit of something. So we'll pay close attention to that over the next day here. S&P 500, stuff like this. More than likely, we might have seen a local top here in the recent market because we've got our higher high. I really need to learn how to draw better on here. And then this is starting to form a lower high. This isn't confirmed yet. Obviously, you want to see a couple more candles. Like I said, I think that gap needs to be filled. So more than likely, they might, one or two things are going to happen. Either we're going to fall down and break below this trend line again, and then we could be moving farther down. Maybe that blow off top was shorter than we anticipated, or it's just going to recoup this gap, bounce off the trend line, and then keep going up. But as of right now, again, there's nothing major pointing the opposite direction. If that Iran deal gets signed on the 19th, so in 2 days, Friday, and it's Wednesday today already, holy. But more than likely, when that deal gets signed, we're going to see markets run a little bit more. Could be a buy the news, sell the rumor, or buy the rumor, sell the news kind of situation, but we'll see. Bond prices, last thing we'll touch on before we jump into the next story. Still supporting itself right around 4.43 for the 10-year Treasury bond. That's why you're seeing interest rates kind of stay exactly where they are. Again, the market's kind of waiting to see what Kevin Warsh is talking about today, what's going to happen, what's next, and what can we anticipate. So a little bit of pent up aggression, if you will, a little bit of we got to see what happens, right? So we'll keep talking about that tomorrow. And tomorrow morning we'll have a little bit more information, and we might even just do a quick little TikTok video later on this afternoon talking about that. So here is the Bloomberg is reportedly published the full MOU, and it ends the war on all fronts. The 12 points that we're going to pay attention to. I love the pictures they always pick of like presidents or anything in general. They always find like the goofiest pictures and they're like, this is perfect, and then they post that shit. Anyways, so Tehran, Washington, and their allies declare an immediate and final end to all war to the war on all fronts. All sides pledge to no hostile action and to refrain from threats. Both pledged to reach a final agreement within 60 days, extendable. The U.S. lifts the naval blockade on Iran immediately upon signing. So Friday, hopefully that's the case. The U.S. pledges to withdraw its forces from the region within 30 days of the final agreement. That would be the first time the United States hasn't been in Iran in a long time, or moving out of Iran, other than the previous administration and the way that they kind of deployed off of the island or off of the country. That's a whole other conversation for another day. Iran works to resume ship movement within 30 days, including removing obstacles. This right here is probably the biggest thing that stick out to me. If we could potentially see the Strait of Hormuz go back to normal, we might actually see things. We might actually see things in a positive notion again. Washington will help rehabilitate and develop Iran's economy with a regional partner and end sanctions on an agreed timeline. This is another thing. So a lot of people don't know this, but I don't look at it this way. But I think that Trump was working on a way to create Iran as an ally. Again, you guys, the big thing that we can do to be strong as a country, and this is where a lot of people make mistakes in business too. By the way, just so you know, like people always have arch enemies or nemesis or whatever you want to call it, right? And you know. That's been Iran for the United States for 2 decades, 3 decades, right? It's been like that forever. But if you look at it from a logical business perspective, so let's remove emotion for a second. Let's remove the political views for a second. Imagine having one of the biggest oil producers as an ally after 30 years of fighting. That creates a very strong world economy. What people don't really understand is, and what happens is in business, so let's remove ourselves from the Iran stuff. Let's talk about business for a second. Most of the time in business, and especially in real estate, I see a lot of people that are emotionally driven on every deal. And when you're emotionally driven, your ego takes over, you're not thinking clearly, and you're making poor decisions. The thing I liked about Trump is that he does not give a fuck. It's not about an ego for him. It's about making a deal happen. And again, maybe somebody's going to say, oh, it's all about ego because he wants to be the number one person in history. Whatever. Dude, whatever. Look at it from the perspective of a business person. He is a business person. To win a deal, both sides have to be able to win a little bit, right? And then if you go and you turn him into an ally, We have an ally on the major corporate or some of the biggest economies in the world, the most oil production in the world. We control Venezuela. We have this. We are now exporting more oil than Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is also an ally. If you have Iran as an ally, now you have control, or at least allies within 80 to 90% of the oil production in the world, which the most valuable commodity in the world is oil. Um, been working with China to potentially partner with them on some deals too. The two adversaries that we've been struggling with for many, many years, we get all that taken care of. That's where strength comes into play. Partnerships, 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 partnerships. When you're in business, partnerships are what drive the force moving forward. That's how people develop and become strong empires. It's by partnering and understanding that there are allies and you need help with things. Sorry, maybe that's a little too much for this video, but whatever. Iran reiterates it will never produce nuclear weapons, with the fate of enriched material deferred to the final deal. So that was a big thing, right? Again, if you become an ally, you don't need to have nuclear weapons, hypothetically. Well, we'll find out in the next administration what that looks like. But for now, both maintain the status quo. Until then, Iran keeps its current nuclear program and the U.S. adds no sanctions or forces. Washington exempts Iran oil and related banking from sanctions, which is perfect. We can finally get some oil moving again. Washington releases frozen Iranian assets or Iranian funds, with final negotiations beginning once implementation guarantees are met. The final agreement is locked in by a binding UN Security Council resolution. The two words that just detonated in Jerusalem sit in point one, all fronts. Did I read that right? The two words that just detonated in Jerusalem sit in point one, all fronts. To be fair, Jerusalem has been, or not Jerusalem, but Israel has been making the Jerusalem. Why am I not hearing any of this shit? But Israel's still been attacking Lebanon, and honestly, the United States has just been like, dude, the fuck, we're past this point. So we'll find out what that looks like here in the next couple of days. Again, Friday's kind of that big. We have big stuff happening this week. Iran war gets signed, a peace deal gets signed on Friday. Kevin Warsh comes in today, tells us what's going on for the next 4 years. And this is kind of a big move in the market. So it makes sense to me that everything's kind of flat today moving in. I mean, the market's been open for 36 minutes. I'm interested to see what happens. How are things going to progress? So here is what we have a little bit more information as far as the U.S. will allow Iran to immediately begin selling oil and fuel under the deal to end the war, per Wall Street Journal. The details include the provision for waivers of sanctions on all oil sales takes effect immediately upon signing the agreement. This also covers necessary services, including banking, transportation, and insurance needed to facilitate the sales. Iran is expected to receive upfront sanctions relief under the deal, with further relief tied to Iran's performance. Oil prices are down sharply on the news, and that is true. I mean, we did see oil prices finally fall below $80 a barrel again for the first time since the beginning of March. So I'm feeling optimistic. I'm feeling excited about it. Anyways, that's kind of what we have today, you guys. We'll talk about SpaceX tomorrow. We ran a little bit out of time today, but pay close attention. We're starting to see that market. We're starting to see things kind of top off, it seems. And I could be wrong. I don't know, but the market's already opening a little bit red today. And after seeing that close, I don't know. Maybe this thing's actually heading down. Well, we'll see. We'll find out tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching. Much love. We'll see you soon.